Welcome to the Belief Breakthrough Show, where we believe that you can achieve the life you dream of simply through shifting your perspective and breaking through your limiting beliefs. With your host, Tina Encarnacion, the author of Stuck in the Fire, a story of resilience, trauma and abuse coach, an energy healer, and Reiki master. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Belief Breakthrough Show. This month is September, and we are talking about coach versus therapist. And when does it apply to you? When do you need to seek a therapist, and not just like a psychotherapist, but a hypnotherapist, a counselor, a social worker? There's different types of therapists, so it's not a one-size-fits-all industry. And then there's coaches, and there's all different kinds of coaches. And every single person has a place and a role in your healing process. And this month, we're really dialing in and we're digging deep to figure out, where does each role fit in your life, and when do you need to disconnect from one and reconnect with another? And so today we have the amazing Suzanne Orlando on, and she is absolutely awesome. She's got over 14 years of experience in the therapy world. And so she's going to tell us a little bit about herself, how she got into it, and then me and her are going to dive in deep to conversation and figure out when it's time to unplug from one profession and plug into the next. So please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Tina. So as Tina said, my name is Suzanne Orlando. I am a licensed clinical social worker in the state of New Jersey, which is also I'm also a psychotherapist. So I've been practicing in my private practice setting for about 14 years at this time. And it's in just really quick, interesting story on how I actually got into it. I had, going through high school, going through college, I was never a really good student. And I really didn't like academics or anything like that. And I actually experienced a trauma when I was about 18 years old, which led me to my own therapy. And my therapist, who became the person who literally changed my life, as I began to sit across from her and have the therapy sessions and entered college and got into that stage of my life, in the back of my mind, I really wanted to be in her position, and I really wanted to sit in her chair. And at the time, again, with the trauma that I experienced and my depression that I was going through and anxiety that I was going through, I really couldn't connect with anything with college. And I really wanted to study psychology. I really wanted to study social work, but I didn't think I could. I didn't think I was smart enough to do it. Eventually, when I met my husband, before he was my husband, I had been through a lot of traumatic relationships and a lot of, trauma, I guess is the best way to put it. My husband instilled a belief in me that I never had before, where he really believed that I could do anything. And I was continuing in my own therapy. And at the time I was in a transition. I had dropped out of college. I didn't want to do what I was doing anymore. And he really inspired me to start going back to school for psychology, which I did. And as I started to do that and go through the process, I connected to it. It was something that, although I was a horrible student historically, it was something that I really valued and started to dive into. And I got confident in it because I was interested in something and my grades were reflecting it, and I was understanding the material. And I would have conversations with my therapist at the time. And, she really instilled the belief in me too, that I could do this. And as I got on through college, and as I applied to grad school and got into a really prestigious grad school in the world of clinical social work, she would often say to me, one day we're going to work together. And as I went through the process and the licensing and got through that piece of it, I ended up becoming a therapist. And the long story short is, we are working together. And through my own therapy, we transitioned out of our therapeutic relationship. We became friends. She attended my wedding. We had a very different connection than most therapists and clients have. And when she got to a point where she wanted to start taking on associates, I was the first person she reached out to. Awesome. She became my professional mentor, and we've been working together for, I want to say, about 10 years at this point. So it's an awesome connection because she understands me at a level that other people don't. So when I have my own things going on with clients, she really gets it at the core, why that why those things can be triggering to me. And we really do work through things. So it's a really nice relationship. It's a really nice story. And it's a very unique story. Most of the time, these things don't happen. But I became a therapist because of my therapist. And now I work with my former therapist. So it's just a really nice transition. And it was a really big growth period for me because I never thought I would be able to do this. And
that's
here
so
I am.
awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so funny that you say that because for me, I'm a certified life coach as well as a Reiki master. And what was really interesting is when my life was spiraling out of control and I'd already gone through all the therapy and all of that, and I wasn't like suffering from my past any longer, but I couldn't figure out how to move forward in my future.
Right.
And so that's where I was spiraling. And so I finally connected with a life coach before I even knew what the hell life coaching was. Like this woman had come to me like 2 years prior and she's like, you need me when you're ready. Hit me up. I'm a life coach. I will bring the person out that's supposed to be shining out of you. And I was like, whatever. Right? I'm busy. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what a coach is. I'm cool. I don't work out. Like,
right.
And now me and her like feed off of each other and work with each other. And so I love that because she is a very important part of my life and my business. And when I'm struggling, just like you, I'll go to her and say, hey, I got this client and this is going on and I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? And we'll feed off of each other. And I just absolutely love it. In fact, she's going to be on this show in a couple of weeks. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing how that happens, right? And the relationship and just as a caveat too, most, and I kind of brushed over it, in the world of clinical social work, you take a class in your master's, when you're getting your master's, it's a class on ethics. And one of the things they emphasize is the boundaries with your therapist. Right. And, again, most of the time that doesn't happen. And I remember during that class, I would raise my hand and say these things and like the room would go silent. I'd be like, well, my old therapist came to my wedding, and everyone's like, because everyone was very, rigid and in their thought process. But, I think there's boundaries and rules for everything. And it just depends on how you're connected to the person. And like if you have this different kind of relationship with your coach, it can evolve into something greater than just that.
Yeah.
Coach and client relationship.
Most definitely.
But boundaries, with the boundaries,
of course you need boundaries. Right. Yeah. And she did really good about, waiting until I was ready to soar before she even introduced a relationship. So she worked with me for a good year to year and a half of helping really define and refine me before she's like, okay, I think that you're ready to work with, like to partner, like, let's do this. Yeah. She's like, I can't not work with you because I just need this. And
when you feel it, you feel it.
Yeah. And it was a really awesome partnership when we started working. And it was interesting because we started a partnership together, me, her, and her soon-to-be wife. And then it disintegrated, not out of any disdain or negativity. It just, we realized that it wasn't going to work at the time. And now we just kind of mirror each other and work next to each other and refer people to each other, but we're no longer in partnership together. Okay. So yeah, very interesting.
That's great.
Yeah. So let's dive into when should someone be seeing a therapist or someone being a coach, because you wear both hats.
I do both. Yes. Yeah. So in terms of a therapy. So again, because I wear both hats, if I have people coming to me for my coaching, there's a specific channel they have to go through and things and interview questions that I ask them. And if they're at a point where, let's just say somebody, I work with a lot of people with anxiety, and even in my coaching program. So if somebody comes to me and they're in a place where with their anxiety is debilitating to the point where it's impacting their day-to-day functioning, they're waking up, they're having frequent panic attacks, they can't get out of their own thoughts, they're frozen, they can't do the things that they once did, even things as simple as going to the grocery store or going to the social functions that they used to go to. That would probably require more of a clinical intervention with a therapist who can take them through those clinical steps and supports, versus a coaching where a coaching might be, maybe I'm struggling with anxiety but it's not getting in the way of my life. I'm still able to do the things in my life, but I'm nervous to take the next step forward into a different place in my life, out of my comfort zone, something I know that I want, but something I'm afraid to step into. That's quite different than being in a place where every single day I'm dreading getting up because I know that I'm going to be plagued by this really intense, anxious feeling that won't let me do the things that I have to do to function as a human being. And that's like that's the grand difference right there. That's the big picture. So if I have somebody in my coaching that comes to me and, gets on a discovery call with me, and we're going through the process, and I hear those things, I hear that debilitating day-to-day anxiety or more mental health issues or depression or things like that, I will stop the conversation and I'll say, listen, this is not the time for us to work together. I think at this time you need to do more of a weekly therapy with somebody who can get to you on a clinical level versus what I can do in my coaching practice. So that's a boundary that I like to hold, but I think that that's a huge, huge difference right there.
It is a huge difference. And what I find now that I've been in the coaching world for several years is you get these people that wake up one day and decide, I want to be a coach. And those people don't have the background. They don't have the education. And I'm not a college graduate. So I'm not saying like you have to go to school. You have to have a bachelor's and a master's, and you don't. Nope. I mean, I am a coach from hard knocks, right?
Yeah.
I went through the trauma. I went through the experience. I learned from it. I healed myself. I sought the therapy. I sought the coaching, and then I became a coach myself, right?
Yep.
But you've got some of these people who all of a sudden wake up and go, you know what? I feel very inspirational today, so I'm going to start my coaching business. And they'll go and they'll take anybody off the street. And I see a lot of these people that are trying to be coaches, and they're like, I'm in this group of entrepreneur coaches, and this one woman says, I'm working with an 8-year-old child and they're having night terrors and they're wetting their bed. And for me, immediately, I'm like, they need to go see a therapist.
Yeah.
And she's like, so what do you recommend I do to help work through this? And everyone was like, send them to a therapist.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I'm just starting out. I really can't afford to lose any clients. And I just want to help them. I'm like, no, you're not qualified.
No.
And so that's another issue I see in this coaching therapy industry. And I see a lot of people trying to fight against each other. And I see therapists going, oh, you're a coach. What? Like you're just a underpaid therapist, or you're just trying to be a therapist without having to go to school. And there's a huge delineation between the two.
Yes. It's so true. And even to that point, Tina, even as a therapist, there are things, I've been doing this for a long time, but there are areas that are not my area of expertise. So even if I've been working with a client for a while and they start presenting with something that is a little out of my wheelhouse, I have no problem saying, you know what? You need to go to X, Y, and Z specialist at this point, and we can come back to our work together when that is taken care of, but I can't help you. So being able to recognize as either a therapist or a coach when something is out of your realm is so important, because it's going to do so much more damage just to keep the client, because I want to keep this level of clients in my practice, or I'm just starting out and I obviously need to get paid for what I do. So I don't want to lose that investment. There's so much more. It's so much more important to recognize what you're capable of versus not, so that you don't do damage to anybody.
Absolutely. I think that you really need, if you're watching this, if you are a viewer and you're trying to decide whether or not to use a coach, you really need to interview who you're going to be. Don't just don't Google and put your finger to the screen and go, I'm going to work with this one. You really have to pick them as if they were going to be an employee of yours. Because you need to make sure that they're qualified to help you for what you're trying to achieve. And that's so important. Ask, how long have you been coaching? Are you certified? Do you have any qualifications? Not just somebody in their basement deciding all of a sudden they're inspirational and they can coach anybody, because it can be very damaging. It can hold you back or set you back further than when you started.
Exactly. It's huge. And I want to say that most coaches, at least that I know, including myself, and I know that you do this as well, Tina, they have like what they call a discovery call or a clarity call, usually a free just to reach out. And not only at that time, I know when I do that, I'm looking for people who will fit into my program. And if somebody's not a good fit, I have no problem saying that. But also the person who's calling and reaching out to you to see if you're going to be their coach, people who are watching this, that's your interview too. So you don't just because you're getting on the call with someone doesn't mean you have to go forward with what they're saying. Even if they feel you're a good fit for them, maybe they're not a good fit for you, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
And I think the same goes with a therapist. When people reach out to me, whether they're looking for a referral, if they're a personal friend of mine, or if they're somebody who's reaching out to me and isn't sure if they want to start therapy, I always encourage them to do the same thing. Contact a therapist and interview them. If a therapist, is not willing to go through a process where they give the client the ability to interview them versus the therapist taking information to see if they'd be a good fit for them. And if they're not willing to do that for you, they might not be the right fit, but you have to interview who you're going to work with. I mean, it's a vulnerable position to be in. You have to make sure you have the right person working with you.
Yeah. And then in regards to therapy, just like coaching, there's so many different types of therapy.
Yes.
So you've got your psychotherapy, you've got your psychiatrist, you've got your hypnotherapist, you've got your clinical social workers, you've got so many. And gosh, I think I've used almost all of them.
Yeah. Everybody has their own wheelhouse and their own rationale. You have your own rationale for going to those different experts. And it's good to do the homework on what those experts do.
Absolutely. And just like coaching, and I know until I dove into the realm of coaching, I thought that a coach was someone who taught you how to do good in sports.
We hear that's what we grow up with. The coaches are the gym teachers or the head of the whatever sport you're playing and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you're an anxiety coach. I'm a trauma coach. I mean, there's emotional coaches, there's business coaches, there's so many different coaches. So really dive into figuring out yourself before you go on your journey. What do you want to achieve?
Right.
Figure out like what is the bottom line, and then find someone that specializes in that intention.
Exactly.
Don't just choose anybody. Now, another thing I want to dive into with you is I find a lot of people will call me and we'll do the discovery call, but they don't really want to invest in themselves.
Yes.
There's a lot of resistance, or they're like, I kind of want to coach, but I might be able to do this on my own. And so the way that I say is, if you're on the call with me, obviously you realize you can't do this on your own.
Yep.
So many of us try to fix ourselves on our own to keep money in our pocket because we've got a financial block, right?
Right.
And so at what point, just from both of our combined experiences, what point should someone be searching for a coach or a therapist compared to when can they fix it on their own?
Right. So I think that there, again, I think people who want to get better, they have good intention. They might reach out, they might go to the self-help books, right? They might listen to podcasts. They might get some advice from friends or family. They might start doing something and have success with it, but they lose momentum as they continue to go on. So I think when you're at a point where, again, either it's on the therapy side, if you're recognizing that whatever's going on in between your ears is impacting your day-to-day functioning, that's a red flag right there. You need to go to somebody. You can't do it on your own. It's beyond your own help. You need to get somebody else to help you figure out how to work through that. I think if you've gone with good intention, the route of, let me pick up the self-help book. The self-help book is great. I'm using the strategies in it, but I'm still not where I want to be. Or I'm using the strategies in it, and the pattern is every time I pick up a new book, I get inspired, I go through the strategies, and then about 3 weeks into it, a month into it, the air comes out of my balloon and I lose it. And then I go through a lull, and then I get back up. And I think those kinds of things, you have great intention, you have the momentum, but you need something a little bit more to be able to help get you to that next level, because what you're doing it's leaving you short of what you're capable of. And you need to invest in somebody that's going to get you to that next level. And with that said, I know you had mentioned, Tina, the investment piece of it all too. I mean, some people, let's face it, good coaches, good therapists, there's a price tag that comes with it. There's an investment that comes with it. And you have to really understand, what is your worth and what are you willing to invest in yourself, and not looking at it. Yes, of course, we all have financial situations, right? But looking at it more of, I'm investing in myself because everything that I've done has not helped me. And yes, I've put money out maybe to buy books or to be part of a podcast or to join these different groups, and it's not helped me. So what is this investment worth to me moving forward, and how
Absolutely.
and I feel like people who invest are more likely to follow through with things.
Well, you have to, right?
Because I'm spending all this, I'm investing in this.
Exactly.
I've got to do the work. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that what I like to say is you can't afford not to invest in yourself.
Correct.
Because if you're reading the books, you're going through the groups, and you're still staying where you're at, that's the definition of insanity. If you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting, right?
Absolutely.
And so and know that if you hire a good coach, you're not going to be with that coach for a lifetime.
Nope.
That coach is going to get you in shape of what your goal is in a very short period of time. It's very intensive. It's very focused directly on you. And really, I feel like working with a good coach, and I could be wrong, you can share your opinion with me.
Yeah, of course.
But I feel like if you're working with a really good coach, within 3 to 6 months, you should have achieved your initial goals.
Agreed. Absolutely. And I think also with that said, like in a discovery session and a discovery call, the first time you speak with them, they should be prompting you to figure out what your goals are. It shouldn't just be this wishy-washy conversation. It should be a goal-driven, directed conversation so that you get clarity in that on how this person's going to help you and understand your direction. And if you're not getting that, I say with a therapist too, when you first have that initial conversation, if they're kind of giving you kind of wishy-washy generic answers, and they're not giving you that very structured format of how they're going to work with you or asking you those direct questions, that might also be a flag, but I agree with you that you're going to get that number one goal achieved in a quick amount of time, but you also have to put in the work too.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the caveat, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually have all of my clients sign a contract, and it states, I will complete all of the work assigned during these sessions.
Yep.
And I know that there is no guarantee to the completing the goal based on what I do. Like I have to do the work. Right. And you just triggered something in my head. I think in talking about the difference between a therapist and a coach, I think a coach, with what you said, having a contract saying, this is what I'm committing to, this is what I'm doing every single week, because I don't want to drag this on for a year. I want to get this going. I'm investing this money. I'm investing my time. I want to get the results as fast as possible. With a therapist, clients might not be ready to do that. So when I'm working with clients, whereas in my head, I know that they can do it, they might not be in a position where they're ready. So I might give somebody a strategy and say, okay, between now and the next time we see each other, let's do this. And they'll come to me the next week and they'll say, I couldn't do it. And it's not because they're like not taking therapy seriously, maybe sometimes, but most of the time it's because there's a blocker as to why they can't. And that's why it takes most of the time people come to me on an initial call for therapy to see if I'm going to be the right fit. And they say, how long is it going to take? And I say, I can't answer that because it's a process. Whereas in coaching, I can say, if you follow this, and this, and this, this is how long it's going to take. And this is the length of my program. I can be very definitive with that. In therapy, I have to follow where the client is at and work through their process. Yeah, and that triggered thoughts to me. So I have a lot of people that will call me, and I can see that they've got energetic blocks, that they've got trauma that they're not even willing to speak to a therapist about. Because let's face it, when you've gone through something really deep and really dark, reliving that can be even more traumatizing than going through the initial thing, right? 100%. And so that's the beautiful thing about Reiki healing, energy healing is with Reiki. I like to say it's like a therapy session with no words. You lay down on a table, you close your eyes, and you basically go to sleep. and you allow me to pull the energy out. So it literally neutralizes the memory and the trauma. And so a lot of times when I'm interviewing people to potentially take on as coaching clients, I realize you are so blocked up. You're carrying so much shit on your shoulders. You're not even going to be capable at beginning your healing journey at this time. So let's do a few Reiki sessions.
Yes.
Not therapy. Let's do a few Reiki sessions and see if you need me or you need a therapist.
Yeah.
Because the cool thing about Reiki is it can prepare them for therapy, or it could prepare them for coaching.
Yeah.
But if they're so stuck in their pain and their trauma, even going to a therapist isn't going to help them. So let's just lay you down. Let's just let's just remove this energy that's lighting up this memory that you can't move past.
Right.
So then you can seek the professional help that you need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why it's so awesome that there's so many different ways that people can access where they're currently at. I love Reiki. I think Reiki is fantastic, and it's definitely a good step. And it's so great that we live in this world that we have so many options.
Yeah, definitely. It was so amazing having you on the show and having this conversation. I have to say, this was probably one of the funnest shows I've done so far.
Yay! I'm so excited. I love to be fun.
Yes. Very informative. I feel like there were so many golden nuggets for the viewers here, and they can really start to understand where their footing needs to be. And so I just want to thank you for your knowledge and your experience.
Thank you for having me.
Openness. Of course.
Yeah.
You guys, thanks for tuning in to another amazing episode of the Belief Breakthrough Show. I hope that this episode gave you some thoughts to process. I hope that this helps you to determine the path that you're going to be choosing to go down in the very near future. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do so. And if you are ready to shift your mindset, start breaking through some blocks, but you're not yet ready to invest in a coach or a therapist, go ahead and grab my mindset toolbox, which will give you guided tools, the tools that I use to heal myself, to work through your blocks so that you can